In today's exercise, they have asked us to add a column in which we have to introduce a function that puts, in the cell of each of the students, passed whenever their final grade is equal to or greater than 5. Otherwise, if their final score is lower than 5, the content of said cell should read failed. So what the exercise is basically telling us is that once we have our table of students with their final scores, we have to manage for Excel to automatically name their scores on the right cell. For example, for this person, who has a 5.9, we can confidently say that they have passed. Same situation for this other one. But for example, the moment we see this other student with a 4.3, what it has to show on the cell next to it is the word failed. So, you might be wondering now, how are we going to achieve this? Well, for this situation we should use what is called a conditional function, which is a function that will input one result or another depending on something that might happen. That is what Excel calls a logic test. It is also known as a logic operation that we carry out using the scores or the data that we already have in the table. That is, what we have to do here is to enter a function that we would say is logical and consistent. Said function has to check if a certain condition is fulfilled. In other words, it would check if the score or value that is to the left of the cell is greater than or equal to 5. In addition, where it is true, it will write one thing, and if it is false, it will write another, in this case, passed or failed. So that is basically the type of function that we want. We now click on Accept, and then we move on to the window where we enter the different parts that create the conditions of the function. What logic test does it have to perform? Well, if I am introducing in cell I4 the grade of the first student, Anna, and this person has a 5.9, therefore the logic test that needs to be done is whether her final score, which in this case is 5.9, is greater or equal to 5. So that would be the main question Excel has to ask here in order for the condition to work. Logically, I will put the reference to this cell and a relative reference so that I can then copy this grade to the rest of the students. The equation that I am going to do, consequently, is asking if the contents of the cell H4 are greater or equal to 5. Where it is greater or equal to 5, in this little second box I've got here, I will put what Excel must write in the cell in that situation, which is the word passed. If it is not greater or equal to 5, it will be considered as failed. So here we finally have the completed logical test that evaluates the marks. If the condition result comes out as true, it will type passed, and in the cases in which it comes out as false, Excel will type failed. We click on the final accept button and we see that for this person effectively their final grade, which is 5.9, is considered a passed. Furthermore, we see that since we have built this expression by referring to the cell just to the left, when I copy this expression down, it will always calculate the score for each student. So what you have to do now is to expand this fill pattern all the way down. And we can see that up until this point, they have all passed, but when I reach the first one that isn't a 5 or more, we see that this person has been given a failed. This happens because the result of the logical test carried out on the cell that is immediately to the left is false. That means that the value on said cell does not reach 5. So this expression is essentially what we have to use for all of the students, and it is, in short, the solution to today's exercise. I hope this was an insightful lesson, and see you all in the next Excel lesson, students.